everybody, welcome to episode 20 of Pins and Needles, my crafty podcast. My name is Zoe and I live right on the coast of South Wales in the UK with my husband Dave, my 3 kids and Jim the dog. You can find me on Ravelry as BFG, and we do have a podcast group there as well. If you search for Pins and Needles podcast in the groups tab, you'll find us. I'm also on Instagram as Pins and Needles UK, and you can get in touch with me by direct message on there or on Ravelry, or send me an email to my email address, which I'll pop up by here. A huge welcome back to anybody that's been here before, and an extra hello to any new people. Quite a few new subscribers in the last couple of weeks, so that is always super fabulous. I will put timestamps in the down bar below, so if you want to skip a section, just check in there and you can jump to wherever you'd like to go to in the podcast. I did want to say a massive thank you to everybody who sent me messages over this last couple of weeks. Lots of people sending get well soon messages for my poor shoulder, and quite a few people also were kind enough to say, don't worry about your unbelievably slow sewing progress. It turns out I'm not alone. I'm not the only one that takes 8 weeks to sew a single item, so that's a relief, and it was very kind of you to take the time to let me know that, so thank you very much. Quick update on my daily life. I mentioned a few episodes ago that I'm working my way through the Couch to 5K app, and I think I've got three weeks left, and when I went for a run on Wednesday, for the very first time I ran over 5 kilometres. I'm still doing like run for a bit, walk for a bit, but yeah, I'm hitting the distance now, so that's fantastic. So hopefully I'll be able to tick one of those goals off pretty soon. My shoulder is much better. I have had another treatment on it from the wonderful Alex at work, so that's feeling much better indeed. I am being careful. I'm not knitting for such long periods of time, and I'm doing lots of stretching and, shaking myself out and things like that. So that's been nice, but unfortunately it has meant that yet again there isn't going to be a massive amount of crafty content this week, so I hope you will forgive me for that. What else did I want to mention? Oh yes, important thing. It's come to my attention that there is a possibility that the BBC will not be recommissioning another series of the Great British Sewing Bee, and that is a terrible, awful thing. A lot of television is absolute rubbish. A lot of it is cheap, not very long lasting, not very pleasant, and shows like the Great British Sewing Bee are a beacon of wonderfulness in a sea of utter crap. And I really feel that we ought to do everything we can to show how much we'd like another series to be made. So there is an online petition. If you go to www.change.org, and I will put a link down below, and there's an online petition to demonstrate to the BBC that there are thousands of us out there who would absolutely love another series of the Great British Sewing Bee. So please, if you have 2 minutes, click on the link below. It only takes 30 seconds. You type in your email address, you say yes please to the sewing bee, and it's done. And I really feel we have a duty to do our best to make sure that crafting remains in the public eye, and it's important for making us feel like we're not alone, and for introducing new people to the wonderful craft of sewing, or indeed making anything by hand. So yes, if you could spare 2 minutes, I'd be very grateful if you went on and signed that. The other thing I wanted to remind you about is our newfangled make-along. There's a thread running in the Ravelry group, a chat thread and a finished objects thread, and people are making wonderful progress. Someone's sewn a coat, someone else has tablet woven a sort of a flame effect guitar strap, and there's some really fantastic things in there. You've got 17 more days to go. So how are you all getting on? Come and show me some progress photos in the chat thread. And I also wanted to remind you of some of the prizes that are on offer. First up, I bought a copy of Tilly and the Buttons Cocoa Dress Pattern. So that will be going into the prize pool. And I also had some very kind donations from other makers. So an enormous hello and thank you to Miriam of My Crafty Dream. She donated this absolutely beautiful project bag for us with chickens, and also a selection of really beautiful stitch markers. Look, that one says handmade. And look, aren't these absolutely gorgeous? See? So a huge thank you to Miriam. And then here's another gorgeous project bag. And this is from Siobhan of Nelly Welly. And this is a slightly larger size, super squishy, padded, nice handle, lovely zip. Both My Crafty Dream and Nelly Welly do have Etsy shops. I will put their details down below as well. So please go and have a look at their lovely things. And thank you again for donating a prize. And also Michelle of Gifted Goodies on Etsy and Ravelry. She is Mrs. River Systems on Instagram. She is a pattern designer and she has very kindly donated a copy of her streaming, let me get this right, streaming through the mountains cowl. Sorry, I can't read my own writing. So yes, so lots of lovely prizes to be won. So do crack on and finish something. I'll draw some prizes from the finished objects thread and from Instagram as well. So if you take any photos of your finished objects, make sure you use the hashtag #newfangled_makealong and then you'll be in with a chance to win a prize. Right, let's head into pins, my sewing section. Now you may have noticed that I'm in a slightly different place today. This is my dining room. It's absolutely freezing today, so I've got the log burner going. I think you can just about see that. And I was doing some work on the dining room table, so I thought I'd just stay here and podcast from here today. Because of my shoulder, I haven't actually managed to do any sewing. So my poor pyjamas have been completely untouched. The only thing I've managed to do is buy buttons. These are the buttons I managed to find. They're just white plastic, bog standard, possibly the most boring buttons known to mankind. I did put a post up on Instagram saying about my button choice. And both Paula and Grace, Grace is beyond measure, very kindly offered to send me some buttons for my pyjamas. That was so kind, thank you very much. Unfortunately, there was nothing that was quite going to work, so I'm going to have to stick with my very boring Hobbycraft buttons, but maybe I will be able to find some more interesting ones. So yes, I haven't actually managed any sewing. As I said, my shoulder is better, but I didn't want to risk it, and sewing really does make it burn, so I haven't touched my machine in 3 weeks now, which is a bit of a shame. But as you can see from the lovely Demels of the dummy who's with me today, I have been doing some preparation work. So what I'm going to do now is hand you over to past Zoe, who spent a bit of time this morning starting to cut out and trace the Manita pattern. So I will hand you over to her and be back in a minute. Right, I've cut all my pattern pieces out. I've made a pile just here of the ones that I need, and the ones that I don't, I've just folded back up and put to one side. I don't put the pattern pieces back into the envelopes, they never fit. I use sort of punch pockets. So I've got the pile of things that I need to get traced off. I won't obviously bother filming me tracing all of them. I'm just going to do the bodice front. Now, one of the things I like about indie patterns is they normally come on quite nice paper, but this is super thin, standard dressmaking paper, so that's why I trace these. So I'll put all the other bits to one side. And all I do is lay my piece out flat. I do occasionally iron the pattern pieces if they're particularly crinkly, but these aren't so bad. And the pieces are quite small for the bodice, so we'll have to see. I buy commercial quality and width baking parchment, greaseproof paper. I used to buy this from Costco, but they stopped doing it, but I found exactly the same brand from Amazon. So for £15, you get 50 metres of it, and it has it used to have the dimensions on it somewhere. It doesn't anymore, but basically it is much wider than usual. You could actually get pretty much a whole trouser piece. You might just have to have a little bit of extra paper, but it's super wide, plenty wide enough for the bodice of a dress and things like that. So I pull myself a piece off, get the thing as flat as possible, and then I just plonk my tracing paper over the top. I do try and make sure it's sort of straight, but it really doesn't matter terribly much. And then I use pattern weights. And when I say pattern weights, what I actually use is tins of tuna. Oh, I don't want to use pins. I don't want to make holes in things. And these are a nice weight. Each tin is 160 grams. And I like the fact that they're quite short. So you can pop them down on your pattern, and as you're moving your arm around, you're not knocking things over. I used to use this. This is a dear string holder that Dave bought me for Christmas or my birthday, but I kept catching my sleeve on the antlers, so I tend not to use the antlers anymore. So all I do is I lay my tins out. I don't know if you can quite see, I'll bring you down to have a look. Sorry if it gets a bit wobbly. There you are, look, I've just plonked them on the top. And again, if you can see, there's plenty of visibility through the paper. Pop you back up there now. Oh, there you are. And the other things that I use to trace, I've got a big French curve ruler, normal pencil, a little rubber, and this is just a stainless steel ruler, but rather wonderfully, it has this black foam backing on it. I bought this for £1 from the supermarket, and it just means that when I put it down on the tracing paper, it doesn't slip and slide around. So once I've got the pattern weighted down, I make sure I, trace off the right size, put all the notches in, and just crack on. And it means that my original pattern is protected and complete. And if I need to make any alterations to the pattern and then I make a mistake, I've always got the original to go back to. So yeah, I will crack on with the tracing. Right, so here is my finished traced pattern piece. So remember, I always put the notches on, and I always make sure I add the name of the pattern piece, what it is, how many I've got to cut, and you make sure you mark in your fold lines, things like that. There's a lengthen and shorten line along here, so I'm sure I'll be adding some length to this pattern. And just here you can see that I've graded out at the top of the bodice I need a large, but by the time I get to the waist I need an extra large. So here's the extra large pattern line, there's the large, and I've just chosen a point and graded it out from there. And if you look at the bottom, there's an extra little titchy bit of length in there as well. So there we have it, one traced pattern piece, all ready to go. Just need to do the others now. Welcome back. So I thought I'd just do you a little video about how I trace out my patterns and a few of the things that I use. I hope that was amusing or informative or filled a bit of time anyway. So yeah, I've got Collect Patterns Manita dress and I'm taking part in the hashtag Manita party. This is an Instagram sew along basically. I'll put all the details of the ladies that organised it down below, and there's more details in the previous episode, but there's all sorts of wonderful prizes and I'm really looking forward to taking part. This is the fabric I will be making it in, and I've got 3 meters of viscose jersey and I bought that from Minerva Crafts. It's actually coming up quite well. It's a lovely navy background colour, and then all this lovely botanical pattern design on the top. So I really like the pattern, and I'm also hoping that because it's quite busy, if I do make any mistakes or there's any tucks or pulls, you know, it will help hide a multitude of sins. I'm sorry about the squeaky chair. My dining room chairs are a bit old. They're actually about 150 years old, and I think I would squeak a lot if I got to 150. Anyway, so in the previous video I showed you me tracing out the bodice pattern, and all I've done is just quickly pin it onto Demelza so I can get an idea. I mean, not a fit, because obviously this isn't stretchy and the fabric is, but just to get an idea of the length. Now, there is a lengthen and shorten line here. I showed that on the video, and it's marked on the pattern. And it's a bit difficult to see, but if I use my trusty ruler, the waist on my dummy comes to here. No, you can't see it terribly well, but there's about an inch difference between the end of the pattern piece and the end of my actual waist. And that's not taking into account seam allowances at the shoulder or at the waist. So I'm definitely going to have to extend that by a good, I think I'll probably whack 2 inches on it as a starting point and take it from there. But I think grading out from a large on the top to an extra large at the waist is going to be about right from the look of it. And again, once I've made the bodice up, I can check the fit before I attach the skirt. So yeah, that's about as far as I've got with that. There's all sorts of different people taking part in this, some lovely fabrics, some lovely hacks. So do check out Instagram, hashtag Manita party. And I'm really looking forward to sewing this up. The finished pictures need to go up on between the 24th and the 26th of February. And as I've said before, I will be at my mother's that weekend because the house is being rewired. So I need to at least cut this out, I think, at home before I head off. On to needles, my knitting bit. I have a finished object to share with you. Now, I must confess, normally when I finish an object, I save it. I don't wear it or give it away until I've shown you guys on the podcast. But I'm afraid not this time. I cast these off and I blocked them and then I wore them the very next day. So I have finished my Podster gloves. It's a free pattern on Ravelry by Glenna C. Yeah. And they are convertible mittens. Look at that. How amazing is that? Now, this pattern comes in 2 sizes. I made the larger size, and the yarn I used was Koigu KPPM, and the colourway is P879. There's the label. This comes in 50 gram skeins, and I had 2 50 gram skeins which were given to me by the very lovely Melissa, and I used 1.5 skeins. There's my leftovers, but you can see the lovely colours. Look. My everyday coat is a 3/4 length grey waterproof. It's not exciting, but in South Wales it is deeply necessary. So the colour of these is absolutely perfect to cheer up my winter coat. So basically, you knit a pair of fingerless gloves. I've never made fingerless gloves with finger nubbins. I call them nubbins. Are they called nubbins? Is there a word? But you know, individual fingers, not just an open top. And then when you get to a certain point in the pattern, you can see where the join is here. You put some waste yarn in and finish off your finger nubbins, and then you pick up the stitches that you marked and you knit a mitten top. And the inside of it is ribbed. And then you got this. And they have a super clever thumb. Can you see? Look at that. So again, what you do is you knit to a certain point on the thumb, and then you do a bit of ribbing, you cast it off, you do a separate bit of ribbing on a different needle, and then join it together. So I did make a few slight modifications to these. The details are all in my projects page on Ravelry, so do go and have a look. Basically, it was just a few more rows because I've got quite long hands. I will probably make these again because I've worn them every single day. They're fantastic. The only thing I would do differently, I think I did a total of 26 rows for the thumb before I started the decreases, which is quite a lot more than the pattern thinks you're going to have to do. So because of that, the peekaboo bit of the thumb is a little bit lower than I would like. Ideally, I'd like it 3 or 4 rows higher up. I mean, you can still pull your thumb out, it's not a problem. But yeah, so those are my Podster gloves. I've been wearing these out dog walking, so there's a little bit of rust on them from Jim the dog's lead. But anyway, super thrilled with those, and absolutely fantastic make, and a free pattern. So do go and make yourself a pair of those. So that's my only finished object. I treated myself to a new cast on. I'm keeping this in the lovely bag that Nellie Welly sent me. I absolutely love this. I used this bag for my brioche mug rug, and I decided to cast on my newfangled make-along main knitted object. I'm not going to get it finished, but that's brioche as well, so I thought, well, I'll stick with the bag because that's obviously my brioche project bag. So I am knitting the Ramble Shawl by Andea Mowry. It's a paid for pattern on Ravelry, and it is a sail-shaped shawl that starts with garter rows and then it ends up in a sort of a herringbone, can you see? There we are, a herringbone brioche end section. I think that came out right. The pattern is written for DK, but I wanted to use fingering weight yarn. I am cold sheeping, so I wanted to try and use what I have in my stash. And I had some lovely yarns. Let me see if I can dig them out. So these are the 2 yarns that I'm using. The colour's coming out pretty good on these actually. This cream is undyed yarn that Jenny gave me. And I think it's merino nylon and stellina. It's got a tiny bit of sparkle in her 4-ply. I need to find the label for this one. Now this yarn is from a fellow member of the monthly thread group that I'm in on Ravelry, and it's from Rain's Obsessive Stitchery. It's Lewis Sock in the colourway Cardiff, because that is near where I live. And I've got 2 skeins of this, and they were a prize from Claire, who's a friend of mine, so thank you very much, Claire. And this is 50% superwash merino and 50% silk. 100 grams, 437 yards. So yeah, there's her label, Rain's Obsessive Stitchery. And those are my 2 yarns. So I'm having, the blue is my main colour and the cream is my contrast. Now, because this blue one is 45% silk, it's got a lovely shine to it. But because I'm using cream as my contrast, the brightness of it and the sparkle means that actually I think they work really well together. So, let me show you my progress. This is how far I've got. So you start at this end, and all you're doing is 2 colour garter rows. I can't give the details away, as I said it's a paid for pattern. So I keep going with this, and eventually I will start the herringbone brioche. And one thing I found with crescent shapes or sail shaped shawls where you're increasing only on one side is that it can be difficult to get an even amount of stretch in both sides of the shawl. And when it comes to blocking it out, it can be quite difficult to get it to lie flat. You often get a big curl in it. But Andea Mowry has done a cunning thing to make sure that the edges of the shawl on both sides are really nice and stretchy. So yeah, if that's something you're concerned about when it comes to sail-shaped shawl patterns, that was the tongue twister. Don't worry about it for this pattern. It's not a problem at all. I have decided to carry the 2 yarns up the side. 2 colour garter rows. I was not going to cut the yarn every time and weave in all of those ends. And actually, because I've done it in the same way every time, I think it looks absolutely fine. So that's how far I've got. I'm about halfway through the garter section. And Hannah, who is crafty little rat, she's taking part in the newfangled make along as well. She's a bit further on than me. She's also doing it in a 4-ply weight yarn. And I am a bear of very little brain, and Hannah is much smarter than I am. And she has worked out some of the maths and the pattern repeats so that I can end up with the same sized shawl as the original pattern, even though that's DK and mine is fingering weight. So I'll finish the garter stripes, whack a lifeline in it, and then start the brioche, and fingers crossed that will all work out nicely. I did have a couple of acquisitions to share with you. I already showed you the buttons. The only sewing related thing was I needed clear elastic. The waistband of the Manita dress has clear elastic in it. I've never sewn with clear elastic. And I know that Sew Positivity, who is one of the Instagram ladies organising this, has written a blog article on sewing with clear elastic. So I'll put a link to that and I'll make sure I have a read. So I've got 5 meters of clear elastic. It doesn't seem very strong to me. I don't know, I'm a bit nervous, but as I said, I've got loads. So when I've cut out all my pattern pieces, I'll have a go on some scraps and have a go with my clear elastic to see if I can get the hang of that. And then I have a single yarn acquisition. Now, I am cold sheeping, but for financial reasons rather than anything else. And Jenny decided to have a go at dyeing up some Aran weight yarn, and she very kindly gave me a skein to try out. These are so my colours. So this is Owl About Yarn, Happy Owl Aran. It's 100% superwash blue faced Leicester, and 100 grams gets you 166 metres or 181 yards. And this is the colourway Fast Lane. It's coming up rather nicely on the camera. So there's sort of autumn browns and golds and like almost a leafy green. Absolutely gorgeous. It's a nice squishy yarn. BFL is not as buttery soft as merino, but it is absolutely next to the skin soft. Yeah, and I do like BFL very much. It's one of my favourite yarns to work with. And yeah, definitely my colours. I am an autumn, so I haven't quite decided what to make with this yet. I haven't knitted anything cable-y for a while, so maybe a cabled cowl. I'll let you know, but I think this needs to be cast on fairly soon. She does have I think 6 or 7 other colourways in her shop at the moment. So if you're interested in some Aran, go and have a look. And she is also having her usual Friday night shop update. So by the time this podcast goes out on Saturday, the shop will be full of yarny goodness. So do go and have a look. So yeah, new yarn, free yarn. Free yarn is the best. Right, well, that's your lot. I'm sorry it was a slightly shorter podcast this week. I just haven't been quite as productive, a bit short on time. So thank you ever so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give me a thumbs up and click subscribe if you want to keep up to date. Do nip over to www.change.org and sign the petition to keep the Great British Sewing Bee. Join in the hashtag Newfangled Make Along, join in the hashtag Manita party. And I hope the next 2 weeks mean that you have lots of crafting time, lots of making time, and I'll see you back here 2 weeks' time. Bye!